A young girl crafted a portrait of her mother using white crayon. She struggled to recall the face. A father had refrained from opening his late wife's letters for a decade. Then, a stranger, armed only with a cup of coffee, brought him to tears, for sometimes tears are the first step toward learning to love once more. 10 years have passed, a decade without a return, and yet this evening, Michael halted the car in front of the house, the very place where every photograph had been packed away, every laugh had turned to dust, and every promise once uttered had long since faded into insignificance. Lila nestled in the back seat, her fingers wrapped tightly around a worn bolster pillow. She remained silent, her gaze locked onto the second-floor window, where a single curtain, it seemed frayed, danced softly in the wind like a faint, half-remembered whisper. "Dad, is this truly Mom's house?" she inquired, her eyes fixed intently on the window. Michael remained silent. The rusted key ground against the lock, emitting a shrill cry, as though the door were protesting his attempt to enter. He nudged it ajar. A shroud of dust billowed forth. Emerging, like forgotten recollections surging forth simultaneously to strike the visage of the one who had endured them. The atmosphere within was thick with moisture, the aroma of aged tomes, the subtle residue of extinguished candles, and beneath it all, lingering softly, was the fragrance of a perfume Michael believed he had left behind. Lila entered with her arms wide open. Like a somnambulist, she drifted through the living room, now draped in ethereal white sheets. Michael trailed behind at a deliberate pace. With each step, the wooden floor creaked beneath him, a weary, aching sound, as if time itself were voicing its discontent. Beneath his feet lay the subtle impressions left by the shoes of a woman whose memory he no longer dared to confront. "Where is her room located?" Lila inquired, gesturing towards the shadowy corridor. Michael raised a hand. Silence speaks louder than any phrase. The final door at the end, the one that remains ever so slightly open. A narrow beam of soft light sliced through the room, resembling a divide between the now and everything that had slipped away. Lila sprinted in its direction. Michael chose not to follow. The following moments elongated, as though the very essence of time had come to a standstill. Then arrived the gentle whisper of motion, inhalation. And then there was a voice. "Father." She dashed forward, her hands tightly gripping a small wooden box. The inscription on its lid was subtle yet still readable. The inaugural evening of embracing motherhood. She unsealed it. Within the confines rested a weathered sheet of paper, tinged with yellow. Lila scanned the opening line, her lips shaping the words softly. "To the one I have faith in. It is." She held up her letter from Mom, declaring it a treasure. Michael stood still. His entire form became motionless. He gazed at the letter as though it were radiating, not from illumination, but from a gentle flame recently ignited within him, both sharp and luminous. He extended his hand, hesitantly, with a tremor, as if making contact with something that still smoldered. He left it untouched, unread, merely folding it away. With intention and precision. "How about we grab a bite to eat?" he suggested. His voice remained unwavering, frigid. Lila gazed at him, the box lid still clutched in his hands. She was perplexed, not truly grasping the situation, yet the glimmer of hope that had momentarily brightened her delicate features faded into a gentle, serene silence. Michael pressed forward, leaving the past behind him. Lila remained motionless in the car, her gaze fixed on the window. The box sat on her lap, softly trembling with the rhythm of the road beneath. She drew a heart in the dust that covered the lid, imperfect and askew. Michael stayed behind. Quiet. His hands clutched the steering wheel tightly, turning his knuckles pale with tension. The letter lay hidden in his coat pocket, smoldering like a tiny ember he dared not confront. They veered onto a winding path leading to a rustic diner, tucked away between two lines of trees. The sign above the door swayed gently in the breeze, its letters worn and indistinct. A woman was cleaning the tables, her hands rough and her wrists delicate and weary. Evelyn lifted her gaze as the door swung open. Her eyes met Michael's, not with recognition nor curiosity, but with a soft glow reminiscent of sunset reflecting on the surface of a tranquil lake, ambiguous yet profound. Lila stepped inside, the box clutched tightly in her hands. Evelyn's eyes held onto it for a moment before shifting to Michael. Her eyes appeared to hold a message, yet remained silent. She offered a gentle smile, serene and subtle, before returning to the table she had meticulously tidied. In that fleeting moment, unnoticed by anyone around, a delicate thread, worn and unseen, began to draw taut. A knot, soft and gradual, started to take shape, readying them all for a confrontation none were truly prepared to encounter. The diner exuded a serene atmosphere, a small sanctuary suspended in time, where those escaping their past occasionally stumbled upon solace unexpectedly. Soft yellow light poured from the ceiling lamps, enveloping the aged wooden tables in a gentle embrace, reminiscent of cherished memories long past. Behind the counter, Evelyn occupied herself with clearing glasses, yet her attention repeatedly wandered to the window-side table, where a father and daughter had just settled in, their hands still cool from the late-season breeze. Lila delicately set the small wooden box beside her, treating it with the utmost care as if the memories within could break at any moment. With a gentle motion, she unfastened a fabric pouch, revealing a box of crayons. She carefully retrieved a wrinkled sheet from her sketch pad and, without uttering a single word, began to create her art. Michael sat opposite her, his chin propped on one hand, his gaze drifting out the window, not at the street but to escape the scene unfolding across the table. Gradually, a picture emerged, a house, a line of trees, and three figures standing closely together, Michael, mother, and Lila. Yet in place of the mother, there existed merely a subtle, incomplete void, devoid of eyes, absent of a smile, just the silhouette of a woman, lacking color, indistinct. Lila glanced upward, her fingers still stained with wax. "All done," she murmured, as if sharing a secret. Michael shifted his gaze in her direction. With both hands, she extended the drawing, presenting it like a delicate gift. He grasped it, examining it intently, for what felt like an eternity, so much so that Lila found herself glancing down at her own fingers to escape the heaviness of his quietude. "Do you recall the sound of her laughter?" Lila inquired. The inquiry escaped effortlessly, akin to a reflex, reminiscent of grazing something that was never meant to be disturbed. Michael blinked, his entire being recoiling, as though someone had pressed directly on the scar he'd sewn shut with years of unspoken words. He remained silent, not out of desire, but due to an inability to respond. He folded the drawing with care, as if tucking away a delicate sorrow that could not bear to be revealed again. He placed it on the table, his eyes lingering on the empty spot where a face once was. He rose to his feet. He mentioned that he would step outside for a moment. His voice was a mere murmur, as if the very essence of sound could shatter the stillness around him. Lila lingered in the shadows. Her gaze trailed after him, obscured by the misty glass. She drew the drawing closer, smoothing it out once more. Then, from her pocket, she pulled out a white crayon, the sort that grown-ups dismiss as pointless since it leaves no mark. Yet Lila started to sketch, gentle, swirling lines across the vacant visage, time and time again. Elusive and undefined, a fleeting recollection seeks to solidify, a grin partially recalled, a whisper resonating just beyond reach. No one else could perceive the white. Yet Lila held on to the belief that something remained. Evelyn strolled by. She hesitated briefly, remained silent, delicately placed a small pastry on the table, and then turned to leave once more. Yet her gaze remained. Observing Lila, and the vacant spot next to her that Michael ought to have occupied, outside Michael rested against the chilly brick wall. The breeze wove through his hair, slipping under his collar. In his hands, the letter from the wooden box lingered, unopened, the faded words, "To the Father I trust," had lost their significance. A subtle, persistent inquiry had taken shape. He shut his eyes, yet in the shadowy void behind his lids, the featureless visage from the sketch emerged once more, sharper than any recollection he possessed. When Michael made his way back to the diner, the evening light had dimmed. The light within emitted a soft, wavering glow, reminiscent of a stove that had dwindled to its final ember, providing just enough warmth to stave off the chill, but barely. Lila remained at the same table, her head lowered, fingers gliding over the worn edge of her drawing. Evelyn stood behind the counter, pouring water into the teapot with a graceful motion. She remained silent, her gaze fleeting and unyielding. There were certain questions she understood were best left unasked, unless one was prepared to confront the profound silence that accompanied the response. As I drove back, the road meandered through avenues strewn with autumn's discarded leaves. The sky loomed heavy and close, as if it were eavesdropping on the hushed exchanges between people below. Inside the car, Michael navigated with a rigid, almost robotic accuracy. Lila nestled in the back, her arms encircling the wooden box and her sketch pouch. Silence enveloped them. Silence enveloped the space, devoid of melody or chatter. The heater fan produced a rhythmic hum, a weary, looping sound that mirrored a fatigue sleep never fully alleviates. As they approached the motel, Lila's voice floated softly, reminiscent of rain gently drumming against a windowsill. "Are you upset that I mentioned Mom?" Michael remained facing away. His hold on the steering wheel grew a bit firmer. He urged not to revisit the past. His voice cracked, reminiscent of a fragile branch in the cold of winter. Lila became silent. She gazed out the window, observing the streetlights flicker by, reminiscent of stars fading into the night, one after another. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her bag, yet she remained silent. Her lips sealed tight, not out of rebellion, but to contain the inquiries that lingered beneath the surface, the ones she questioned whether they were permitted to emerge. That night, the rented room shimmered beneath the weary light of a solitary yellow bulb, dim and strained, mirroring the turmoil within Michael. He hurried through his shower, slipped into fresh clothes, and walked past Lila's room. The door stood slightly open. Through the narrow gap, he glimpsed her nestled beneath the blanket, the gentle glow of the lamp enveloping the room in an ethereal stillness. He rapped softly at the door before entering. Lila's old phone lay on the bed, its screen casting a soft, lingering glow. A gentle instrumental melody filled the air. On the canvas before her, she meticulously sketched, outlining the envisioned visage of her mother. Only memory and emotion intertwined, with no external reference to guide them. The sketch remained incomplete. Michael grasped the phone and switched off the display. "It is essential to concentrate on the here and now," he stated, his voice devoid of emotion, as if issuing a command. Lila remained silent. She gave a single nod. The blanket moved slightly, perhaps a subtle clenching of her arms or the soft modulation of breath, striving to hold back the tears that threatened to spill. Michael moved on swiftly. He emerged and shut the door behind him. Not with volume, but with a steady resolve that cut through the feelings he preferred to avoid. In that instant, the glow of a bicycle light danced on the window's surface, casting a fleeting shimmer against the glass. Evelyn stood there, cradling a small tray that held a cup of warm milk alongside a neatly folded cloth napkin. Peering through the slatted blinds, she observed it all, yet she refrained from knocking, held back from entering. She delicately set the napkin, pristine and adorned with a small blue flower, in the corner beside the steaming cup of milk resting on the windowsill. A simple act, yet in a world where individuals hide their suffering away, such a gesture could be the sole melody that resonates with someone. Evelyn averted her gaze. She forged ahead, never glancing back. Some experiences, when genuinely attained, transcend the need for sight, their healing process has already commenced within. The evening descended gently, akin to a melancholic visitor showing up unannounced at a gathering where they were not welcomed. In the stillness of Michael's room, the clock's ticking resonated, each second echoing like an unfinished thought lingering in the air. He reclined on his side, his eyes wide open, a muted yellow halo from the bedside lamp illuminating a faint circle on the ceiling, yet he remained oblivious to it. His thoughts wandered back to the sketch, the indistinct, faceless visage, and the question that had settled softly in the stillness. "Do you recall the sound of her laughter, Dad?" The rented house nestled in a tranquil neighborhood, and as night fell, the streets fell into a hushed stillness. When the silence lingered too long, Michael shot upright, as if pulled abruptly from slumber. Lila's door stood slightly open, her bedcovers strewn about in disarray. She was absent. A tiny note rested between the pillows, inscribed in uneven, slanted blue crayon, reminiscent of the kind only a child would choose. If I am ever overlooked, I will hold on to my own memory. He read it once, then again, and something within him shifted, subtly, without discomfort, yet enough to disrupt the cadence of his heartbeat, akin to a gentle detonation in his chest. He donned his coat, ventured into the night, accompanied only by a sense of urgency and the lurking shadows. The streets lay in a state of apathy, lingering in a half-slumber, as traffic lights shifted their colors without purpose. The chill crept under his garments as he scoured every inch, his voice barely above a whisper yet filled with urgency, inquiring of passers-by if they had caught sight of a small girl. Not a single person had. Within the confines of his mind, Lila's voice, the voice of his wife, and the echo of his own silence intertwined, resembling a tape spun in reverse at an incorrect tempo. Then something drew him in, not reason, not recollection, but an invisible thread woven into the very core of his being. The old bus stop, where he would patiently wait for her after work, during those serene, windless winter days. Twilight descends. Lila had never set foot in that place, yet memory serves as a guide when our own recollections fail us. He turned onto the narrow street, and there, beneath a flickering bus sign, dim red and green lights glowed like weary sentinels. Lila sat with her back against the post, knees drawn to her chest, her eyes fixed on some distant place that never seemed to arrive. Michael remained silent, his breaths barely audible. He gradually came to a stop, then settled down next to her. Silence enveloped the moment. The bus stop lights shimmered in Lila's gaze, her small, uncertain eyes brimming with unasked questions lingering in the air. Michael remained still, his eyes locked on the buses that passed by, refusing to halt, not this evening. After an extended period, he made contact. For the first time in years, his hand moved freely, not driven by obligation or remorse, but from a gentler place, one he believed had faded away long ago. His hand lay softly on Lila's shoulder. She tilted her head in his direction, her gaze fixed downward, subtly drawing nearer. Michael was uncertain of its meaning, yet he sensed his hand beginning to shake. Just a hint, merely enough to sense that something had broken. He held back tears, even as his throat constricted and his chest throbbed with each inhale. The tears remained absent, like a promised rain destined for a different dawn, not this evening. Upon their return, Lila was peacefully asleep in the car. Michael brought her inside, laying her softly on the bed, as if he were placing a cherished memory in a space that was finally secure enough to embrace it. He then delved into his coat and retrieved the letter, the one Lila had discovered in the wooden box. He opened it for the first time. The pages had taken on a yellow hue, their edges curling inward. The handwriting flowed gently, its slant evoking a sense of nostalgia, reminiscent of the script he'd encountered on birthday cards and the backs of cherished photographs. Yet now, each word felt like a distant message, just out of reach, leaving him yearning for understanding. If you find yourself reading this, I may no longer be by your side, inquiring whether you've had the chance to read it yet. I don't seek eternal remembrance, but I sincerely wish that our daughter feels cherished enough to never question who may have fallen short in loving her. I worry that she will carry a void within her, and that void will be associated with you if you don't rediscover the art of kindness. Michael folded the letter with great care. He gazed at Lila, curled up on her side, gripping her pillow as if it were the sole refuge in a world that felt just a bit unsteady. He was perplexed by much of it. Not at this moment. The letter unfolded like a tapestry of feelings he had either lost touch with or never fully grasped, yet for the first time, he found himself unable to look away. He set the letter down on the table, gazing at it for a moment before turning away and leaving it behind. After a decade, Michael left the bedroom door wide open, a departure from his usual habit. He left it slightly open, a thin sliver of light, much like someone might cautiously reveal their feelings, uncertain of the words to come, yet prepared, at last, to take the first step. The morning unfolded gently, like a delicate layer of mist draping itself over the world. Sunlight streamed gently through the curtains, soft and warm, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, delicate fragments floating like unspoken memories waiting to take shape. Lila remained in a deep slumber. Michael lingered in the kitchen, a cup of untouched coffee cradled in his hands. The letter rested on the table, seemingly alive, as though it had inhaled the night's stillness all on its own. He perused it once more, the tilted, gentle script. The phrases were straightforward, yet they eluded his hold, as though they ventured into a realm within him that remained nameless or too daunting to confront. At midday, he brought Lila outside. He remained vague about their destination, merely stating that they required some fresh air. Lila remained silent. She clutched her fabric pouch close to her heart, the one containing the crayon box and the wooden memory box within. She had ceased to anticipate clarifications, a few inquiries. When questioned repeatedly without receiving answers, they retreat into silence on their own. The diner appeared unchanged, perhaps it always would be. Evelyn wiped the table by the window, her head slightly bowed, hair neatly tied at the nape. As Michael entered, she glanced up, and their gazes locked. A subtle acknowledgement exchanged between them, neither inviting nor dismissive. A moment suspended in silence, shared by two souls who had previously remained mute in the shadow of their grief. Lila selected the table positioned by the window. Michael carried the letter with him, this time in an open state. He settled into his chair, gazing at it intently as if attempting to unravel the mysteries of a forgotten language. Evelyn placed the coffee on the table, dark and unadorned, and did so in silence. Yet she chose to stay. She drew out a chair and settled down opposite him. A prolonged silence lingered in the air between them. "Have you ever lost someone?" Michael asked, his gaze fixed elsewhere, "and never had the chance to say that final thing you needed to?" Evelyn's fingers brushed the edge of her cup as her eyes wandered to the window. The breeze caressed the leaves beyond the window, twirling them gracefully over the pavement in gentle, murmuring spirals. "My husband," she remarked. "He served as a soldier. Each time he departed, he would pen a letter to me. There was one I just couldn't bear to dive into. It took me 3 years to muster the courage, and in the end, it was just 8 lines." Michael pushed the letter gently over the table's surface. Their fingers grazed lightly as she accepted it. Evelyn opened it carefully, smoothing the creases as if each word were a threshold she wasn't quite prepared to cross at that moment. She recited the words with clarity. Neither too loud nor too soft, just the right amount for him alone. "I worry that she might not understand what it truly means to experience love in its purest form. Your strength isn't necessary for me. I simply require a touch of kindness, even if it's just for a moment each day." She hesitated. Her gaze remained fixed on the last word, as though a resonance still lingered in that moment. Her voice remained steady, yet beneath the surface lay a void that had been stirred once more. Michael remained motionless, his posture impeccable, his gaze locked onto her hands, yet the subtle quiver beneath his eyelid hinted at an impending fracture. "Are you following me?" he inquired, almost with desperation. I don't believe I ever learned the art of gentleness." Evelyn hesitated before responding. With meticulous care, she folded the letter and returned it to him. Then she spoke, deliberately, as if pouring water into a glass that had a small crack. "Gentleness is not a natural impulse. It's a lesson we grasp only after enduring our own wounds, allowing us to truly understand the depth of another's suffering." Michael lowered his gaze, his finger glided along the border of the letter, and for the first time, its words felt tangible, no longer mere echoes from an unattainable realm. They transformed into a presence that had once existed, once cherished, once dreaded, and was now extending a fragment of its essence, so that he might discover how to continue loving in her stead. Evelyn rose, gently sliding her chair back from the table. "When I read my husband's letter," she said, her voice gentle and delicate, I didn't grasp every word, but then it dawned on me that he hadn't penned it for my comprehension, he crafted it so that I would always remember. She departed, trailing a delicate aroma of mint, something tender, once shattered, now mended with an unseen thread. Michael observed her departure. The letter in his hand had ceased to embody the remnants of what was lost. It seemed like a threshold to what was left, an opening still shrouded in mystery, yet no longer barred. He raised his gaze. Through the window, he caught sight of Lila, perched at the table's edge, lost in her drawing once more. At this gathering, there was a round table featuring a man, a woman with her hair neatly tied back, and a little girl tucked away in the corner. No one uttered a word, yet their gazes met, and, Michael realized, perhaps kindness doesn't require words, perhaps it starts in quiet moments, perhaps that alone suffices. Beyond the diner window, the wind rustled the trees, as if attempting to convey a message that remained just out of reach. The waning afternoon light filtered through the window, creating elongated streaks of gold that danced across the surface of the wooden table. Evelyn had stepped away, yet the warmth of her chair remained, a subtle reminder that someone had been present, had comprehended, and had departed, leaving behind something more profound than mere counsel. Michael remained still. The letter lingered in his grasp, its edges gently crumpled as if it had been held by someone torn between the desire to hold on and the urge to release it. The phrases lingered within, resonating not as sounds, but as feelings. The concluding statement, "You don't." It's essential to embody strength, yet embrace gentleness, even if just for a fleeting moment each day. It seeps into him like water navigating a hairline crack, gradually softening a barrier he has constructed over a decade. His shoulders started to shake, and he couldn't discern if it was from the chill, the gusts, or the weight of something finally giving way within him. The initial tears descended quietly, yet they were deliberate, weighty, and genuine. They settled on his hand atop the letter, then absorbed into the paper, as if the very words were washing away all that he had never found the courage to express. He leaned in, his elbows resting firmly on the table. He stood his ground. He allowed it to continue. Suffering had ceased to be an entity to evade. It was an experience that needed to be navigated. Evelyn observed from her vantage point behind the counter. She remained still, not approaching him. She gently rested a hand over her heart, as if to calm something within her, something achingly familiar, undeniably real. In that instant, the door gently creaked ajar. Lila entered the room. In her hands, it lay folded with precision, the handkerchief. Evelyn had once found it outside her door, now cleaned and thoughtfully brought back to her. A gentle offering brought home, not from duty, but from the heart. Upon seeing her father, she remained silent. She lingered at the entrance, her gaze expansive, filled not with astonishment but with a sense of familiarity. At last, the grief she had felt for so long had materialized into something tangible. Her father was in pain, and it was a pain that he no longer attempted to conceal. Her footsteps were so delicate that the wooden floor remained silent. She approached, setting the neatly folded handkerchief next to the letter marked by tears. In a hush so profound it seemed as though time had paused to take notice, Lila extended her tiny hand and placed it gently upon her father's. Michael hesitated for a moment, then his larger hand enveloped hers. They averted their gazes from one another. "I didn't need to, they did." In the next moment, Michael pressed his forehead gently against her shoulder. A father, frayed by sorrow, supported by the gentle affection of the daughter he once struggled to embrace. No words passed between them, yet every empty space was occupied, not by explanations but by their very existence. Behind the counter, Evelyn turned away, not in avoidance but in a moment of deep respect. Her hand lingered on her chest, her eyes cast down to the weathered tile floor, where countless painful steps had tread over the years, and today, for the first time, someone had decided to pause. The following afternoon, the sky was adorned with a delicate layer of white clouds, as sheer as gauze, suggesting that the heavens had gently placed a soft veil over a lingering scar. Michael found himself once again in front of the well-worn wooden gate, the aged key lying silently in his hand. Lila stood next to him, her fingers entwined with the handle of her fabric bag, her gaze directed upward to the second floor, where the worn curtain had been swapped for a new one, simple yet tidy. Silence enveloped them, yet every footfall on the stone path conveyed emotions that words failed to express. Today, they returned home. The house had shed its oppressive weight. As the door creaked open, it unveiled the aroma of aged timber, mingling with the essence of paper and dust, and a subtle hint of lavender wafting from the distant room at the end of the corridor. Lila entered, her fingers gliding over the banister of the wooden stairs, as if she were revisiting a childhood left incomplete. Michael trailed behind, his gaze resting on each aged item as if cataloging a life momentarily halted. The entrance at the E. The door at the end of the hall stood slightly open. Lila cast a look over her shoulder, her eyes inquiring without uttering a word. Michael gave a slight nod. The door swung open silently, as if the very essence of time paused in anticipation. The interior remained almost pristine, as if a person had merely stepped out for a brief moment. A neatly folded cream blanket lay at the foot of the bed. A petite picture frame rested at a slight angle on the vanity. A perfume bottle, partially emptied, its label worn to quietude. Michael perched on the edge of the bed, lost in thought. He hesitated to grab anything immediately. He gazed around, allowing the lavender to hang in the air like a cherished greeting. He opened the vanity drawer and retrieved several aged photo frames. The initial image captured was from their wedding day. The second, he had to brush away the layer of dust with the hem of his shirt, revealed his wife cradling a newborn Lila, her face weary yet radiant, her eyes fixed on the baby with a gaze that held a lifetime's worth of promises. She turned and extended the photo towards Lila. "Your mother often feared that her time with you would be fleeting," he murmured, his tone gentle like a tale shared in the quiet of night. "I believe she would want you to mature in this place, surrounded by all that belonged to her and all that remains ours." Lila nodded, holding the photo tightly against her heart. Her silence spoke volumes. That subtle gesture spoke volumes. A silent affirmation of a family embarking on a new journey, not starting over, but picking up from where they had once paused. That night, the old kitchen, now immaculate, softly revived, radiated a warm yellow light that touched the wall where they had rehung the sole photograph of the three of them together. The only instance in which they had ever occupied the same frame. At the table, Lila scribbled intently, her brow furrowed in deep concentration. She meticulously folded the note, tucked it into a pristine white envelope, and with precision, inscribed on the front, "Ms. Evelyn." The following morning, Evelyn. "I've got it." Within the confines of the space lay a solitary drawing crafted with colored pencil. It depicted a man, tears glistening on his cheeks, alongside a little girl grasping his hand. In the background, a woman with her hair elegantly styled in a bun rested one hand over her heart, seemingly smiling. Underneath the drawing lay a line, unsteady yet distinct, expressing gratitude for bringing tears to my father's eyes. The tears seemed to cleanse the sorrowful corners of his heart. Evelyn remained expressionless, neither smiling nor shedding a tear, yet she extended her hand to caress the softly shaded pale gray hair of the pencil-drawn woman. She closed her eyes, as though the missing stone had just been returned to mend the fractured path. The initial dawn in the aged residence commenced with the aroma of steaming tea and rays of sunlight streaming through freshly polished windows. The gentle clink of cup against saucer in the kitchen played like a soothing melody, setting the stage for slow beginnings. Michael took a seat. The living room floor is a chaotic scene, with open cardboard boxes spilling forth memories like leaves dancing in the wind. Lila moved swiftly, one moment bent over to clean dust from a wooden picture frame, the next glancing up to inquire, "Did Mom? Is this what you meant, Dad?" She smiled to herself, as if the answer held little significance, only the understanding that it was meaningful. Michael paused before responding, his gaze fixed on her, revealing emotions that had long been hidden, eyes that no longer shielded their true feelings. As she pulled at the old drawer beneath the bed, Lila discovered a small envelope tucked away inside. It rested silently beneath a pile of aged papers, as if it had been anticipating this very moment to be unearthed. With careful steps, she brought it to the living room and gently set it in her father's palm. Michael unsealed it. His fingers quivered, not out of fear, but from the conviction that the words within would resonate profoundly. The script was recognizable, leaning, soft. The opening line provided no salutation. "If I am not around anymore, please let our daughter know just how profoundly I loved her father. Ensure she understands that love exists beyond the pages of stories." It was fleeting, akin to a last exhale, yet it remained the sole element unscathed, complete amidst the relentless march of time. Michael perused the letter repeatedly, his grip on it growing firmer. In his eyes, a glimmer danced over the depths of something calm and profound, not tears, but the subtle awakening of emotions surfacing from the very core of his being. He cast his gaze upon Lila. She remained there, clutching Evelyn's handkerchief with a firm grip, the very one she always kept close, serving as a quiet testament that compassion transcends language. "Would you like to hear about your mother?" Michael inquired. Lila gave a subtle nod. Her silence spoke volumes, her eyes glowing softly like a lamp in the night, dim yet inviting, filled with assurance. Michael smiled, a subtle expression, uncertain yet genuine. He promised that starting tomorrow and every night thereafter, he would share a story about your mom. Simply small details, yet they hold truth. Lila moved in, resting her head gently against his shoulder. They sat together, within the aged house filled with unpacked boxes and unguarded emotions, as a love was finally shared, not through images, but through whispers, sounds, and memories brought to life. Evelyn lingered silently by the window, gazing out into the world beyond. She simply walked in, without a sound or a word. She merely observed through the gentle pane of glass, a man starting to narrate and a child beginning to absorb. A narrative that transcends mere storytelling, embodying the resurgence of a journey once deemed forgotten. She rested her hand on her heart, feeling the stillness that had momentarily settled there, not from sadness, but from the profound realization that her role had been fulfilled. Evelyn turned away, moving slowly, her footsteps almost silent, yet just audible enough for someone to realize she had been present, that she had observed a homecoming. A soft breeze whispered through the air. The fragrance of lavender wafted from within, mingling with the fading daylight, akin to a gentle benediction carried through the ages, a reminder that love, even if it arrives tardily, can still bring comfort to a heart that has known solitude in this world. Thank you for accompanying me through this gentle and heartfelt journey of healing. If you share the belief that love doesn't have to be flawless, just tender, day by day, please give a like, express your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel to support the continuation of these touching stories, because sometimes a single story is enough for someone to rediscover how to love again.